Good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon Prelude. I am the Virginia Program Director for Solar United Neighbors. Thank you all for joining us on this evening. We've got people slowly trickling in. We're going to give folks a couple of minutes. We did have 175 people who registered for this event tonight. So we're expecting a pretty large crowd. So we're just going to give folks a chance to kind of trickle in. Um, and then we'll do a little introduction and housekeeping and get right into our presentation for this evening. Again, I say good evening to each of you. My name is Brandon Prelude. I am the Virginia Program Director here for Solar United Neighbors. I'm joined this evening by our Policy and Advocacy Campaigner for the Atlantic Southeast region, Mr. Selah Goodson Bell. We'll both be presenting on this evening, speaking about our Virginia legislative preview for this 2026 session. And this this webinar this evening will be recorded. So if you did register for this event, you will receive a follow-up in the coming days of this recording. Feel free to share it, post it, and the like. We've still got folks that are trickling in. Just trying to get everybody from the waiting room into the meeting. See some familiar names as well as some new names. So thank you again. Thank you all again for joining us. Selah, you got the chat.
Yep, I got you.
I mean the chat in the waiting room because
Yeah.
folks still all right. Cool beans. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Um, for those of you who have never heard of Sun, just a little background on Solar United Neighbors. We are a 501c3 vendor neutral nonprofit with a focus on consumer advocacy and consumer education around solar. We do our work through our theory of change, where we help people go solar. We join them together. And then what we're doing tonight in this legislative preview, helping them fight for their energy rights. So again, we thank you for joining us. And I'm going to turn this over to Selah, who's going to set this up for us by talking a little bit about where Virginia stands legislatively currently. And then I'll come back after him and begin to talk about some of the pieces of legislation that Sun is supporting, as well as some other legislation that we are tracking. Selah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brendan, and appreciate you all. Good evening. We really are thankful for you taking the time to join us. So, like Brendan said, I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of Virginia's energy landscape and primarily focusing on affordability and reliability. As many of you probably already know, Virginia is in the midst of what we would call an affordability and demand crisis. And the primary culprit, but not the only culprit, are the surge in power-hungry data centers. We've been tracking that multiple reportings that show, particularly from the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission, that data centers could almost double the state's energy use in the next decade and cause Dominion's residential bills to increase by over $400 a year by 2040. We've seen that these bills are already set to go up by nearly $135 this year following the utility's latest rate hike. And PJM, our regional grid operator, has also seen its capacity auction prices skyrocket by tens of billions of dollars in the past 2 years. For anyone who doesn't know, this is the entity that manages the interconnection of energy systems to the grid and runs annual auctions where electricity suppliers compete to offer the lowest price to provide power to the grid at all times, particularly on the hottest days of the year when demand is highest. These auctions set the wholesale capacity price that that utility companies then pay to suppliers when they need extra power to ensure that there are no blackouts for us. And so what we've seen over the last couple of years is a mixture of fossil fuel bias, clean energy interconnection delay, and again, the unchecked growth of data centers, which have caused capacity auction prices to increase by almost $14 billion in the last 2 years alone. So to continue, we've also seen that in 2025, in Dominion's integrated resource plan, they projected a 2.6 gigawatt shortfall by 2031 without new capacity resources. And that's roughly enough capacity to power 2.6 million homes. And back on PJM, their latest auction in December reached a price cap despite failing to procure enough capacity to meet their reliability standard of about 20% of a reserve margin. They actually reached only 14.8%. In other words, ratepayers are increasingly paying more money for a less reliable system. Throughout the South, we're seeing utilities scramble to delay coal plant retirements and fast track the build out of gas power plants to serve data center demand. The SEC recently perpetuated this trend when they approved Dominion's Chesterfield Energy Reliability Center, a gas peaker plant that the utility will be able to recover over $1.4 billion from ratepayers to construct. And the SEC admitted that reliability concerns were actually what drove the growth of data centers and influenced their decision, as they saw gas peaker plants as a more true and tried method to meet surging energy demand despite the environmental and financial costs. Utilities keep trying to insist that this is the only way to keep the lights on, but we know that the over-reliance on utility scale fossil fuel resources will only increase our energy costs and leave the grid more vulnerable to weather disasters, put our decarbonization goals out of reach, and also smother our air with pollution. We know that Virginia needs common sense, community-oriented energy solutions that prioritize the needs of ratepayers over the profits of data center developers and utility companies, as well as their shareholders. And so that's where distributed energy resources come in. DRs offer a cost-effective and easy-to-deploy alternative that can meet our energy needs without sacrificing our health, climate goals, or grid stability. For anyone who doesn't know, these are small to medium-scale energy technologies that produce or store electricity close to where consumers actually use it. Common types include community solar systems, rooftop solar systems, battery energy storage systems, as well as electric vehicles and chargers. It also includes energy efficiency upgrades that can reduce your home energy use and demand response technologies that can manage or reduce your energy use during peak times. And when these resources are geographically dispersed but managed centrally and called upon by utility companies, they're often referred to as virtual or distributed power plants. And through these, what we like to call DPPs, grid operators can deploy DERs as if they were a single power plant that supplies energy, reduces demand, and stabilizes the grid. Overall, we see that DERs reduce risks due to quicker deployment timelines and also greater resource diversity. They're critical to reducing our exposure to power outages. They provide more comfort, and they also provide more local jobs and economic development opportunities while reducing impacts on public land and natural habitats, just to name a few of their benefits. Another thing that actually stands out is that DERs, when compared to traditional utility scale resources, are better suited for providing boosts to energy equity because they can localize and concentrate many of the above benefits in the communities that actually need them the most, like low income and overburdened communities who face high energy burdens, have less access to modern infrastructure, and have disproportionate exposure to pollution from often being fence line to industrialized areas or power plants or other similar polluting facilities. So one thing I just want to flag before we move on to talking a little bit more about the ledge is that we had a report with Current Energy Group that just came out last week that dives into the value of distributed energy resources to Virginia's residents and entire energy system. It finds that by 2028, an achievable expansion of DERs would provide the same capacity as a new 950 megawatt gas plant, while costing $288 million less per year. This would save the average Virginian family about $90 per year. And so now we'll transition to talk a little bit more about what we're providing for this legislative session. And just as a reminder, Virginia has already started to recognize the value of DERs through the 2020 Virginia Clean Economy Act and the 2025 Community Energy Act. But we're seeing that the barriers to unlocking the full value of DERs are not technical or economic, they're actually institutional, and they stem from policy design, issues with program implementation, and also issues with utility incentives that are misaligned with the least cost, highest value system outcomes. So now, before I transition to Brandon, I just want to flag that we're working with partners in the Equitable Solar Coalition this year to fight for legislation that overcomes these barriers, to increase DER deployment, and ultimately build an energy system that is affordable, democratic, and resilient. We're also playing defense by pushing against several bills that are trying to obstruct these crucial resources. So I'm going to pass it to Brandon now to dig a little bit more into our legislative strategy this session, starting with 5 bills in the Affordable Clean Energy Package.
Thank you, Selah, for that introduction and for leading us so far. So some will be supporting a couple of bills on this session. Excuse me. First, starting with the ACE package, which is a package of 5 bills. First in that package is the Distributed Generation Expansion Act. HB 628 and SB 175, carried by Delegate Carlson and Senator Van Valkenburg. This particular bill will increase the size of distributed resources like solar, wind, hydropower from 1 megawatt to 3 megawatts. Increases the carve out for small renewable energy resources from 1 to 5% from 2026 to 2035. We ran this bill in a coalition last year, and the increase was from 1 to 3 and then 3 to 5. So the language is very similar, except instead of there being a step from 1 to 5, we're going directly from 1 to 5. And this speaks to that carve out on rooftops, previously disturbed sites like parking lots, landfills, abandoned coal mines, which can come online quickly and don't face any interconnection delays. It eliminates the 50 kilowatt threshold for power purchase agreements. So currently right now in Virginia, if you're not low or moderate income, qualified as low or moderate income, which is 80% of the average median income, or if you're not a small business or a nonprofit, you cannot participate in a power purchase agreement. This bill would create PPAs for all, which I think is essential, especially right now, given that the federal tax credit has expired. This gives folks a way to be able to monetize that by using a PPA. Sun Virginia is planning to support this piece of legislation. Second bill in the ACE package is the energy storage bill. This is being run by Delegate Sullivan and Senator Bagby. This would require APCO to construct, acquire, or procure at least 780 megawatts of short duration storage capacity by 2040 and 520 megawatts of long duration storage by 2045. And then it would also require Dominion to construct, acquire, or procure 16,000 megawatts of short duration storage and 3,480 megawatts of long duration storage capacity by 2045. It also creates a model for fire safety ordinances for localities to use when regulating energy storage projects. This is another rerun from last session. The only difference here from the bill from last year is that the battery storage targets are higher for short duration storage. And then there's the inclusion of long duration storage in this bill, different from last session. Sun intends to support this bill as well. Next slide for me, Selah. Then we have consumer protection. Sun is taking the lead on this bill. We're excited about this. This is a bill that we ran a couple of sessions ago, and now we're looking to run it again. In light of some of the changes to the federal tax incentives, what we've seen and encountered over the past year is that a lot of leases and power purchase agreements are ripe for fraud, where the install will promise one thing, you'll sign a contract, not know what you signed, or you sign something and then it's completely different. And so in light of that, and knowing that the industry will be shifting to these particular methods, We want to make sure that we can put some guardrails around that and ensure that consumers are protected in a very smart, ethical way. So Delegate Shin and Senator Bagby will be running this bill for us, and it is a part of the ACE package as well. It will require a set of uniform contract and disclosure provisions related to the sale, lease, related to a sale, a lease, or a power purchase agreement for residential solar systems. And this will take place in the form of specific contract language that must be included, as well as a disclosure form in the form of a cover sheet on top of that contract that must be signed and acknowledged by the customer. That form is going to ensure transparency by clearly listing things like system specifications, costs, financing options, terms, production value, any escalator terms, ways you can cancel your right of rescission pieces. So one of the things that we found is that this is information that's normally buried in a 40, 50, or 60-page contract that an installer or developer or subcontractor would just have you initial at the bottom of the page without explaining it, so that folks know what they're signing up for and have all the information up front. Our goal is to move all of those tucked away items to the top of the contract via a disclosure form, so that customers are aware of what they're signing up for, and then understand how to get out of those things if they were to change their minds, and what the time periods on those are. Again, Sun has taken the lead on this bill. This bill did pass two sessions ago in 2024, but Governor, former Governor Glenn Youngkin vetoed that bill. The next bill is a smart rooftop permitting ordinance bill. This is being run by Delegate Hernandez and Senator Survey. This would create a state-managed automated platform that serves as a tool for contractors to obtain permits and for localities to process applications for said permits. What we've seen across the state, one of the things is that permitting varies by locality. There's no consistent set of regulations or requirements for permitting. It is by locality. And sometimes permitting can add, or most times permitting does add some soft cost to the homeowner when it comes to installing the system. This seeks to address both of those two issues in one by streamlining the permitting process, making it a little cheaper, but then also allowing for instant plan reviews and streamlined permitting, but also giving localities the option to be able to enhance that process as well, so that customers are not waiting for 2 and 3 and 4 months to receive a permit so that their installation can begin. Sun does intend to support this bill. It does create a 2-pathway piece for localities, whether they want to make those permitting changes on their own within a certain period of time, or they can tap into the state-managed automated platform, which I don't know what it is going to be, but I think it will be Solar App Plus, which I know some localities are already using. And Sun does plan to support this particular legislation. And then the last of the 5 bills that's in this Affordable Clean Energy package is the balcony solar or plug-in solar bill, House Bill number 395 and Senate Bill 250, run by Delegate Krizik and Senator Survey. This would allow renters, folks on HOAs or people who don't own their own roofs, to be able to install a 1 or 2 panels to be able to help offset some of the load in their homes. This would prohibit interconnection requirements. In other words, meaning you do not have to get permission from your utility to be able to use this. And it would prohibit any special utility fees, as well as utility permission of the installation of plug-in solar systems below 1,200 watts, which is maybe about 1 or 2, depending on the capacity of those panels, maybe about 1 or 2 or 3 panels. It sets restrictions on the landlord's ability to prohibit tenants from installing the system on the exterior of the tenant's dwelling. So your HOAs or your landlords won't be able to block you from investing in this type of technology. It exempts these systems from net metering programs, and it also exempts utilities and electric co-ops from being liable for any damage or injuries caused by these systems. Sun is supporting this bill as well as a part of a small working group, co-working group that's been making some changes to this bill to try to bring it into alignment, not only with some national UL certification standards, but also to find some consensus amongst our working group where there have been some pieces where we've had to find some agreement. Sun has been 100% supportive of this measure, and we've been working in the legislature since the start to bring awareness to it to local lawmakers, and lobbying on behalf of this legislation. CCAN, Chesapeake Climate Action Network, is the lead on this bill. Thank you, Selah. Then we have a couple other energy-related bills. Now, I'll be fair with you all. And I see a question that I want to just answer before I go from Henry Kelly. I assume that the balcony plug-in solar bill will not undermine safety requirements for interconnection. Yes, that is correct. There will not, because it will not require interconnection. There will be no backfeeding from those plug-in solar systems back into the grid, which is why it's exempt from a net metering program. So yes, you are correct, Henry. Thank you. That's a very good question. Now, I will be honest, there are DLS, or the Department of Legislative Services, has been very, very, very behind during this year. This is a budget year. So there are quite a bit of bills, quite a bit of budget amendments, and Department of Legislative Services is behind in producing bill drafts. So, I mean, each day, and I see Bob Shippey on this call, he can definitely relate to this. Every day, some 200 or 300 bills are dropping, and we're anticipating some over 2,000 pieces of legislation that will be considered over these 60 days. So this is not a full list of everything that we're tracking, but we did want to highlight some other important pieces of legislation that Sun is tracking, both some that we're supportive of, leading, or actively involved in, while there are a few that we're also opposing as well. So to start, there are two related bills, and I'll talk about them together here. And some of you may remember on last year, Sun was part of a small working group that ran a virtual power plant pilot program bill in Dominion territory that was passed and signed into law. That docket proceeding is currently ongoing as that program is being set up. Unfortunately, on last year, APCO wrote themselves out of that bill. So this year, we're planning to come back. There is a House bill right now. I did just learn moments before this legislative session that Delegate McNamara will not be carrying this bill. We are looking for another patron currently at the moment, but this bill will run on this legislative session, and this would be to permit a pilot program or virtual power plant program in APCO territory. It would require it would set that program up and require them to file before the SEC for that program, and I believe the cap on that program is 50 megawatts for that virtual power plant program. And we are supportive of that piece of legislation and actively working with Appalachian Voices, who's the lead on that bill. And then there's another virtual power plant program bill for electrical cooperatives that Delegates Hernandez and Senator Surville are running. And this bill, unlike the APCO virtual power plant bill, which is a mandate, the electric cooperative virtual power plant program bill is a permissive bill or a permissible bill. So it just gives them the permission to have a virtual power plant program, and they can file for the SCC to stand that program up. The electric cooperatives are supportive of this legislation, so we do expect it to pass. There is right at the moment some pushback from APCO on their virtual power plant program, but with the rising cost of energy, especially in APCO territory, with their rates having risen over the past 4 years, some 49%, we see this as a value add. And a way to address the affordability crisis for so many Virginians, especially Virginians in Southwest Virginia, who have experienced a precipitous rise in their energy cost. So some will be supporting both of these bills, and we are very much so actively involved in helping to shape them as well. And then there is another bill that HB 1225, which is a net metering standby charge threshold bill. And for those of you who don't know, Dominion levies at a 15 kilowatts, there is what is called a standby charge that kicks in for those users at 15 kilowatts or higher. Now, some things about that standby charge, it's not much that the consumer can control by that, but it uses a period of time based on your max consumption and charges you for that, even if you're not consuming that type of consumption during that time period. I personally call it a tax on solar. And what it does is it forces homeowners to size their system smaller than what their annual production might be, or to size the system at 15 or 16 kilowatts and then use a smaller inverter to throttle that production to below 15 kilowatts AC. And so Delegate Shin is running this bill right now in the House. There's not a Senate companion currently. And this bill would raise the threshold from 15 kilowatts to 20 kilowatts before any standby charges would kick in. The average consumer who is seeing standby charges might see anywhere from $25 to $75 a month in a standby charge. I know a Northern Virginia resident who was the impetus for this bill being run, who's paying $179 a month in standby charges on an 18 kilowatt system. And so we see this as a way to address the affordability crisis for current solar owners who may be experiencing standby charges. We are supporting and leading this particular measure and working with Delegate Shin. And so I'll say thank you to all of you. I know there may be some folks up here. We've gotten a lot of feedback over the past 8-9 months about standby charges, and so we're looking to take some action on this session around that. So thank you for your support on that. A couple of the bills that we're tracking. Dominion has a shared solar. There's a couple of shared solar bills that'll be before legislature this session. Dominion has a shared solar expansion bill that's being run in the House and Senate by Delegate Sullivan and Senator Surville. This would authorize an additional 525 megawatts of capacity for the Phase 2 Dominion program, and hope to open that up to get more community solar projects in the ground. And then APCO's the shared solar bill, and APCO is referring to billing. And this bill is being run by Delegate Sullivan, and it would require net crediting, and it allowed those shared solar subscribers to receive any excess bill credits more than once annually. Currently, under APCO's program, they can only receive those excess bill credits once within that 12-month period. This bill would allow that to happen more than once, again, trying to address the affordability issue with higher energy costs, especially in APCO territory. And SUN will be supporting both of these measures. And then we have another bill here. And so, Semi, correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is the last bill that we're covering, that we're tracking. Yes. This is a bill that just popped up on our radar a couple of days ago, or maybe at the end of last week. It's a solar storage fee to fund Virginia Clean Energy and battery storage promotion programs. This has been sponsored by Delegate Sullivan. What this bill would do is it would direct the Department of Energy to establish a program that would promote clean energy and battery storage across the state of Virginia, which I am all for. However, where this bill gets a little sticky for us is it would require solar and storage developers, not the consumer, but the developer, to pay a 2 cent per watt fee to the Virginia Clean Energy and Battery Storage Promotion Fund to fund the administration and implementation of that program. Now, I am all for a program where we can help promote clean energy and battery storage, and of which Sun has been a leader in this space when it comes to consumer education around solar and battery storage. However, the bill as it is currently written, there are zero guarantees or language in this bill that would keep the installer or developer from passing that 2 cent per watt cost along to the customer. And we view this bill as increasing the cost of solar in a time where we're trying to decrease the cost of solar and make clean energy more affordable for people to invest in. As it currently stands, we plan to oppose this bill because there are no guarantees currently in the current language that would prohibit an installer or developer from passing this 2 cent per watt fee along to the consumer. And we have zero confidence that would actually happen. We do plan to meet with the patron to share our objections and see if there is a way to insert some language within this to prohibit the installer or developer from passing that 2 cent cost along. But until we see that, we will be opposing this particular measure, not because we don't want to see promotional programs for clean energy and battery storage. We just don't want to see those programs at the expense of folks who are going to be investing in clean energy. And so there's going to be more on this, and we'll be providing some legislative updates as we go throughout the session as well. I did see a question in the chat, and I know this is unrelated to any legislative topic, but I will address it because it is the hot button issue right now, which is Dominion's net metering proposal. And thank you, Bob, for beating me to it. That case did end today. That docket cases did end today, and we are awaiting a decision. I would ask you all to be patient. This is not a decision that's going to come within the next day or two. By law, I mean, don't get me wrong, the commission could definitely make an order tomorrow on this, but by law, by statute in the Virginia Clean Economy Act, this case just must be concluded within 12 months of it opening. And this docket case opened for Dominion when they initially filed May 1st of last year. So the commission has until May the 1st of this year to make a ruling. If I had to guess or, kind of estimate a timeline here, seeing that we just came out of APCO's case as well. APCO's case started in September. Bob, correct me if I'm wrong here. I want to say it was September of 24, and that ruling came out in August of 25. So best estimate, I would say probably around April-ish, depending on what the SEC's load is right now as far as cases. we should be getting a ruling. Sun did intervene in that docket case, along with Sierra Club, Vote Solar, and Piedmont Environmental Council. We do feel very confident in our position on this case that Dominion cannot, with their own analysis, justify the reduction of full retail value for net metering, as well as they cannot justify changing the netting interval to an instantaneous or 30-minute netting interval. We had a rally on yesterday, a press conference to bring awareness to this case, and we'll continue to update our list and our base as more developments come. I do want to send out a shout out to all of you. I don't know if any of you were there yesterday, but over 50 people signed up to give in-person testimony yesterday, which is great. And then 1,354 public comments were submitted into the public record. And so there's quite a bit of interest in this case. So we thank you all for your support, for taking action. And to put that in comparison, in the APCO case, I don't think 10 people signed up for in-person testimony, and there were only a total of like 500 comments or 300 comments in that entire docket. So we're looking at 10 times the amount or 3 or 4 times the amount of comments and engagement in this docket case. So kudos to you all who have been avid supporters of solar and have really stood up and made your voices heard to push back against this egregious proposal and attack on solar customers, on net metering, and on private investment. And thank you, Bob just weighed in the chat here. My guess is we will get a decision sooner. APCO case established some precedent here, and there were a few questions and really no cross. So yeah, hopefully, and that's another important point to raise as well. APCO's case did set some precedent for this. One of the things that the commission did in that order was they justified the legality of 12-month netting by using the Virginia net metering code that describes a net metering program as being a 12-month netting period, and called it essential to any net metering program. So we are definitely hoping that the commission will rely on the precedent that they set in APCO's case and rule in our favor. There's some things. There may be some other things that are handed down in that ruling, similar to APCO's case. There were some changes to their avoided costs, their avoided cost compensation or excess generation compensation. But I will say this: a win in this case is the preservation of full retail value net metering over a 12-month netting period. If we can get that, which is exactly what we got in the APCO case, that would be considered a win. So I want to thank you, Mark, for that question, and for allowing me to get on my soapbox about Dominion's net metering program. And thank you, Bob, for weighing in there as well. All right, next slide, Ceylon. And after Ceylon, you're gonna take this slide. All right. Great.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Mark and Bob. And again, a huge shout out to everybody who came to the rally. It was really cold yesterday. I heard I was in DC at a different rally, and yeah, it was very cold. So we really appreciate your dedication and everyone who signed up and submitted comments. Again, 1,300 is no small amount, and is an amount that the commission will have to take seriously. And in that spirit, we want to continue that engagement. You all play a really important role in pressuring decision makers to, actually make decisions that represent your interests. And so, as we talked about today, we've outlined a number of bills, especially the Affordable Clean Energy Package, that are looking out for ratepayers first, for your affordability, and also the stability of the grid, which again serves you. And so you can help us again fight for a more affordable, resilient, and democratic energy system in the Commonwealth by filling out some of these action alerts. I'm going to drop them in the chat so you have reference. But the first one, again, is in support of the ACE package, those 5 bills that Brandon went over earlier. And I'm going to drop that one right now. And the second one is a more general alert that goes to, so the first one actually goes to specific legislators in the Labor and Commerce committees in the House and Senate, as well as actually, yeah, just as well as the general laws too, because of consumer protection. The second one, whoa, sorry. Sorry, let me make sure. Brent, I'm gonna drop something in the chat. I just want to make sure outside my door is okay. That was really loud.
Selah is dropping those action alerts in the chat. So we're urging you to take action just one more time by elevating these bills to your local legislators, asking them to support these measures, and letting them know that these measures are critical to securing a reliable, affordable, and clean energy future for our state. Virginia has a load growth problem. Dominion's own IRP says that in 2045, they will not be able to meet demand. So Virginia needs every electron possible. And it's just a fact that clean energy is cheaper, safer, more reliable, and faster to deploy than fossil fuel gas peaker power plants. So yes. So Selah, I'll jump it back to you.
All right, sorry. Appreciate y'all having a little patience. Everything is okay on my end. There's just a really loud door that was slammed. Okay. As Brennan said, please take action. I put some links in the chat, and we'll also I'll drop this in the chat too during the questions portion. But if you want to join our mailing list, if you haven't already, that's where you can again keep a track of the different ways to stay engaged. You can ask us questions as we have a help desk that is pretty active and answers a wide range of questions. And so, yeah, there's a mailing list here, and then there's also the email right here at the bottom. And we appreciate your patience and want to make sure y'all have time to ask us questions. We know we covered a lot. And if you have a question and want me to go back to a specific slide, just say so, and I'm happy to do that. But yeah, we want to open it up. Feel free to, if you can do the raise hand function, and then we'll call your name. You can go off mute just so we can like keep it a little organized because there are a lot of us. That would be great. But we have about 15 minutes for questions.
We got a question from Janice Moore in the chat, and her question is, "What is our new governor's position?" And Janice, I just want to clarify to make sure I answer this correct because I can't speak for the governor's administration, but we have been in touch with them. So I just want to make sure: are you asking about a specific bill, or of the package of bills, or her position around a particular topic that we covered tonight?
The bills that we're talking about here and the support. Because if we assume that we can get it through the legislature, is it going to be vetoed? That's the concern.
We are not concerned about any of these bills being vetoed. As a matter of fact, the plug-in balcony solar bill is a priority of this administration. And our bill lead is currently not only working with the stakeholder group, but also working with the administration to adapt their priorities and their language. All of these bills, especially the bills that are part of the Affordable Clean Energy Package, those first 5 pieces of legislation, have all been, the governor's office have been briefed on all of those bills, and we believe that they are very much so in support of these measures as they seek to address the affordability piece. And I know, and let me say this: as we go through this legislative session, and you watch the news and you read the news, you are going to hear the word affordability over and over and over again. And so we believe, not only through the report that we did with Current Energy Group, but also with these measures, we believe these bills are taking a step in trying to address the affordability crisis of rising energy costs here in the state of Virginia. And we do not anticipate, if all 5 of those bills in that package pass, which we anticipate that they will, some with a little longer road than others, if it gets to the governor's desk, we do anticipate her to sign them. Feels good to say her.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for that question, Janice. Any other questions on tonight?
Yeah,
A
we
lot
got
of commercials on TV about the data centers creating power and potentially lowering costs. That sounds like marketing baloney. Is there something that might be done to counteract this messaging? Great question, John. There is a data center coalition that is working on some messaging, and I know the commercial you talking about the commercial where they show you a town and everybody went to the football game and everybody having a good time. I know the commercial too, and you know there's a couple of pieces of that I did not cover, and this was intentional, you all. We didn't add any data center bills to this legislative preview. Number one, because there are so many. There are quite a few data center pieces of legislations. And then there are a lot of different there are a lot of different focal points of that legislation. Like there's legislation that deals with the expiring tax credits for data centers, but then there's also legislation that deals with data centers paying their fair share. There's also bills dealing with data centers investing in the build out of clean energy infrastructure. So there's quite a different few areas of that. We are monitoring it. And one of the things that I've been working with one of the leads on data center on data center legislation is finding a way to, you know, if data centers are going to consume power, massive amounts of power, massive amount of energy, a massive amount of water resources to keep those turbines cool. That could potentially drive up the cost for residents, then we believe it is, number one, that they should pay their fair share, number one, but two, they should also invest in the build out to lower some of that demand, whether that means them having renewable energy on their facilities or paying for the build out of that infrastructure within communities surrounding them. So we're monitoring that. And it's still, the reason we didn't report on it beyond it being so many is that process is very much so still fluid right now. And so as we continue to meet in our coalition groups each and every day and continue to get readouts and progress on that, we'll continue to monitor that. But I would say from a safe perspective, some would be supportive of anything where data centers pay their fair share, or where there is some funding from data centers to help with the build out of clean energy resources that would benefit communities and folks. All right, I see some other questions in the chat. Thank you, Sarah. I think you answered Jerry's question. James Harp asked a question, at what point will it be worth it just to go battery backup and disconnect from the grid? These data centers are only going to get more prevalent, so will our electric bills just keep increasing? You know, Virginia is the data capital of the world, and we're not the data capital of the country. We are that, but we are the data capital of the world. I want to say NOVEC, that cooperative by itself has like 65 data centers in it. So you are correct. They are prevalent, and I do not see them going away anytime soon. I don't know if I would say this is the time to go strictly to battery backup and disconnect from the grid. I don't think I'm in a position to offer that kind of advice. But I do think you have a point with rising electricity costs. Before data centers, we were already seeing a low growth problem. So now that low growth problem gets exacerbated even more because of data centers. So I think there was some recent analysis and polling that was done to voters in Virginia. Voters in Virginia do overwhelmingly, and this is Republicans, Independents, Democrats, all do feel that data centers are driving up their electricity costs. However, they in turn don't blame data centers. They blame Virginia legislators for not taking enough action against data centers to ensure that they're paying their fair share. So I see this as being a huge sticking point for this session. I mean, our energy bills are definitely rising. I don't know. I mean, data centers do play a big part in that. But I will also tell you the volatility of fossil fuels, which is why renewable energy makes much more sense because it's not dependent upon fossil fuels. But the volatility of fossil fuels and oil prices will definitely cause our electric bills to keep fluctuating as long as there's a heavy reliance on it. But I don't know if I would go as far as giving the advice to add your battery storage and get off the grid. I think based on your consumption and your individual needs, that would be something that each and every homeowner would have to voir dire and kind of go through on their own based on what their needs are.
Can I add a note on that, Brandon? Unless
Yes,
you
you can.
in the Dominion's virtual power plant program. Okay, if you covered that, all right. So I was answering the chat, so I might have missed it. But just want to make sure folks know, particularly James, that yeah, as that program is stood up, and if we get a program in APCO territory too, and actually has good incentives and is well designed, which we're actively fighting for, there will be incentives to stay connected to the grid so that you can continue to help keep the cost down for your other neighbors who might not have batteries and continue to just pour into a grid that ultimately is for everyone. But again, we need to make sure the incentives are well aligned for that behavior. So we're working hard on that.
We'll move to Charlie. Well, you answered Charlie's question. Charlie asked about the form letter in favor of solicited delegates that are not my delegates. Can you correct this? Senator is not Edmund anymore. New senators, okay. Okay, all right, thanks. I think so. I answered that. Are there any other questions we have on tonight? Now, I will say this: if I could go back, James, to your question, I do know that there's a huge push right now. When you talk about battery storage, there's going to be a huge push for storage. Every independent IRP modeling that has been run by allies of ours in the state shows that not only do we need more renewable energy build out and infrastructure like solar and wind, we also need more storage, at least 6 times more storage than what we have. So I definitely would encourage folks, to look into battery prices. There are a couple of bills. There is a bill right now that's being run by Southern Environmental Law Center that is on bill financing that would get a consumer battery storage in their home at the expense of the utility, while they also save about 10% a month on that, while using on-bill financing to recoup or to pay the cost of that down. Very novel idea. Sun's kind of neutral on that right now, as long as those behind the meter assets are not being owned by the utility. We're definitely in favor of deploying more renewable energy resources. So I would definitely say yes, look into some batteries. Definitely look into some batteries. I want to say as well about when it comes to net metering, this is why the net metering piece is so important, because if net metering were to change for future customers, of which current net meter customers and low-income residents in Virginia would still be, low-income residents would be able to choose which tariff is better for them, and current net meter customers would be grandfathered in for 25 years. That is currently a part of code. But what it would do is it would severely stunt our ability to deploy these resources if net metering were to change. It would take away a stream of revenue and payback, and it would render it unbeneficial for most solar users. Let me see. I installed a 10 kilowatt system on my house in 2017. It's been providing all the energy I need. Bill is negative for 9 months. So the year, perfect, positive for 3 months of the winter, which is solar at my church. It's the same way we work as well, Stan. Never receive any money for overproduction. Only a more negative bill each month. The net metering bills going to affect me. Now, let me say this. There are no net metering bills. No one is running any net metering legislation because there is a current ongoing SEC docket. No legislator would touch that kind of legislation. But if you are currently a net metered customer, the effect of the SEC's docket case would not have any immediate effect on you. Your net metering tariff would remain the same. Ken asked the Trump administration, okay. Thank you, Selah. You answered that before I could get a chance to get to it. Matthew just added a comment. We need more solar. We also need nuclear. There are some bills, Matthew, that are seeking to add nuclear into the VCEA or the Virginia Clean Economy Act as a coalition with our Equitable Solar and Storage Coalition, as well as VCN's coalition are supporting those measures. So we'll be monitoring those bills as well and seeing what happens with some of those nuclear pieces as well. Is there any legislation? Okay, I skipped one. Battery storage cost for this one. Okay, thank you, James, for that. Michael Whelan asked, is there any legislation that is encouraging some kind of credit or rebates for those that install solar and or battery backup systems? Currently, no. And Michael, I mean, there's still yet time, and all of the budget amendments have not been introduced yet. Or have not dropped by the Department of Legislative Services. But as I am aware in the several coalition groups and bill trackers that I've been watching, there's currently not a piece of legislation that would offer any kind of incentive credit or rebates for solar or batteries or battery backup, not statewide. Utilities have argued that net metering customers are subsidizing solar customers, but would raise costs for all of the customers, include low-income customers. Could you help with a counter argument? Yes. Thank you, Bob. Bob jumped in before I could get there. This is that cost shift argument that Dominion often levies when it talks about net metering customers. In this particular docket case, I will have you know that Dominion changed some 2 or 3 times their analysis numbers around their cost of service analysis that was justifying their cost shift argument. So like I said yesterday at our press event, if Dominion can't nail down the amount of kilowatt hours it delivers to net meter customers, or if that continues to change time over time, that means that they're not even sure how much they are delivering. And so it kind of takes away some of the credibility of their cost shift argument. I also levied that the entire energy system is built on a cost shift. There's that urban customers are subsidizing some costs for rural transmission. And then, as Bob just so eloquently said, independent analysis shows that net metering customers currently shift some of the costs to other rooftop solar customers and not not the other way around. And so, I mean, here's the other piece. Dominion gets to use that energy at full retail. So they get the best of both worlds from customer generators who have rooftop solar. Rooftop solar, despite what the utility will say, does benefit the grid. It helps lower the need for demand, and it also helps lower the need for building out expensive infrastructure that ratepayers then go on to pay. The Chesterfield gas power plant that was just approved by the SEC that will take 10 years to get online, hundreds of millions of dollars to build, and hundreds of millions of dollars to operate. Every Dominion customer on this call today is going to be footing some of that bill. Whereas with rooftop solar, it is leveraging private investment, your money, my money, our private investment, to be able to create a more reliable grid. So, the call-ship argument from Dominion is bogus, and we're hoping that with this SEC case, we can finally put that to rest. Thank you for dropping that DR report in the chat too, as well, Selah.
I do want to flag we are
at time. Yeah, I was getting ready to say that. We are at time. We want to be respectful of everyone's time on tonight. I thank you for your attendance tonight, and these were great questions. Again, you can always, if you have any other questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We have a team of folks who will readily get back to you. I'm currently in Richmond now, trying to lobby on behalf of some of these efforts with our partners and with our allies. But myself, Selah, or other members of our team will be glad to get back with you and answer any questions. You can reach out to us and find us here at bateam@solarunitedneighbors.org. Again, we thank each and every one of you for being here on tonight. You will receive a follow-up of this presentation. Feel free to share it. We encourage you to share this with your friends, with your neighbors, with other allies, because your voice is going to be needed to make the change that we seek. And I see all the comments of you all thanking Sun for what we do, but ultimately Sun thanks you all for all that you do. We thank you for being supportive of these causes and for making your voices heard. Without you, we would not be able to do the work as effectively as we do. So we say thank you to each and every one of you. Hope you have a good night and be safe in this upcoming snowstorm. Everybody have a great evening.